right, so this week we are talking about QPR, which is question, persuade, respond, and it is a thing for suicide prevention. So the previous weeks we've talked about stress and mental health, of yourself, but what about others? What about your coworkers? What about the people around you, your friends and family? And some of this is applicable with your professional communication skills. Some of this will play into, even the folks you work with as an officer. But let's really kind of focus on your coworkers and, to a certain extent, your friends and family also. So QPR, whoops, typo. That says QRP, but I'm not going to fix it. Is question, persuade, refer. And so there's also a version of it that is question, respond, persuade, QRP. But these days we're going more with QPR, question, persuade, refer. And some of the things to think about here, what are some warning signs of suicide? Some of the things that, can show us that a coworker might be in danger. People make comments about suicide. People start talking about death and dying and, maybe the world would be better off without me kind of things. I'm a burden on this workplace because I'm not a very good officer, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Giving away possessions that, folks, obviously they think about being dead. And so they want to see people get certain things like, I'm not using my camera anymore. Do you want it? Oh, I'm not using this particular, device that I have anymore. Do you want it? And they're getting ready so that once they are gone, there's no squabbling or arguing over who gets specific things that mean something to that person. You start getting, obsessions with death and dying, that folks keep talking about, when they're gone, when they're not around, what kinds of things would feel like in death, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Then we can get into some of our uncharacteristic behaviors, acting recklessly, drinking when they weren't really drinking kind of people, not sleeping at all, maybe not getting out of bed, being late for work, because they can't get out of bed. And they seem to be changing their performance. Then folks who were normally kind of laid back officers become aggressive, mean officers. Officers who had been really, high performing officers suddenly become lazy, slugs who just aren't doing any police work, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we get those, behavior changes and the performance changes. You just look at them and they look like they're overwhelmed by stress. They're complaining about the headaches. They're constantly, complaining about, feeling overwhelmed, and they look haggard. Typically clean shaven person who's always kind of poorly kept. Grooming standards go down, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Makeup, hair, things like that, just not on point anymore. Straight up showing signs of depression. Seeming to be uninterested in things. Withdrawing from social interactions, withdrawing from being part of the team, that okay, we all meet for breakfast near the end of shift, and this person, not going to bother, anything that would show that they're no longer really caring about being part of our group. So any of these are, and there's plenty of other warning signs, but any kind of warning sign that lets you know that somebody's heading down a path of a problem. So we begin with the question, remember. I don't remember where I first heard this, but somebody once said, human being has one mouth, two ears. So we should listen twice as much as we speak. And from an investigative standpoint, that's really true. From this standpoint, there comes a point where we need to stop listening and start talking. But to start with, we're going to start with, listening to people. And we do have to ask some questions, but we ask some simple questions and we listen as much as possible. At this point, we're not giving advice. We're talking to them. How are things going? How you been feeling after that bad call? We had a nasty multi-person fatality crash. How you feeling after that? Maybe we've had a string of bad calls. How you been dealing with the fact that we've had 10 death investigations in a row? Be open. Let them talk about it. Listen to the emotion and the words. How have they been dealing with it? Have they been dealing with it properly? Do we have, I just drink myself every night, 6-pack of beer and I'm fine, Or are they expressing that they are dealing with it positively, that maybe they've been saying, I'm going to work out. I've been talking to a guy, therapist, whatever. Going to my church. And while they might be experiencing depression, maybe, they're on that upward path coming out of it. But if they don't appear to be on that upward path coming out of it, if they are giving you answers where the emotion and the words are letting you know that they're heading down, where things are getting worse, there comes a point where you got to be honest, and you got to be direct, and you got to say, look, are you thinking about suicide? Are you thinking about killing yourself? Do you want to hurt yourself? Sometimes we talk about, when we are dealing with suicide prevention, we don't want to give people ideas. So you want to be, un-idea-ish in your questions. Are you thinking about suicide? That's not giving somebody an idea. That's asking a question. Giving them an idea would be saying, are you thinking about, putting a bullet in your brain? Because now you've just put an idea in their head about shooting themselves. Big difference. You want to be that more open-ended. You're thinking about suicide. You're thinking about hurting yourself. Don't give them a tactic to do so, because they might act on that tactic. So we're going to continue to talk with them. No judgment here. Somebody says, yeah, I've been thinking about doing something. I've sat home at night and I've unloaded my gun because I was afraid I might do something to myself. You're not going to offer judgment. You're not going to say anything that would be judgmental to them. What you're going to do is you're going to tell them that you're here to help. You're going to persuade them. Let me help you. Let me get you what you need to do so that you don't kill yourself. Let me make sure that you are still an officer. Let me make sure that you see your kids grow up. Let me take you to see a counselor. Come with me. Let's go to the hospital. Whatever resources you have available to you, you bring them there. And in doing so, you're referring them over to the help they need. You're bringing them into the ER, bringing them to a counseling service. It just depends on the size of the community you're at. Maybe you're bringing them to, a supervisor's office, although that's kind of going and see a supervisor can be a little ugly in these kinds of situations because sometimes people feel judgment, but we're bringing them to the help. Maybe it's, let's get on the phone with the suicide prevention hotline and let me call and put the phone in your hand. And this way you can start talking to the assistance you need. And hopefully that'll be bringing additional assistance to us, because thinking about suicide is the tip of the iceberg here. The tip of the iceberg is just the little bit we see. It's this gigantic thing underneath PTSD, anxiety, depression, all the compassion fatigue, all the other baggage that comes with the job is all under the surface, and it doesn't boil up until somebody is about ready to pull the trigger or do whatever it is they're going to do to commit suicide. Don't do any of these. Avoid these things. Don't minimize somebody's problem. If you're realizing that somebody's not doing so hot and they're saying, yeah, I think my wife's going to leave me. I think my boyfriend's going to dump me. Don't be like, I'm on my third wife. I've gone through 4 boyfriends this year. Everybody deals with breakup differently. Don't be going, is that it? You're all depressed because you got a relationship that just came to an end, or, I just handled a call where a kid died. So I handled it. Is that it at all? I had a fatality with, 4 kids. Everybody handles this job differently. Don't start creating a stigma about mental health. Don't be sitting there like, dude, you're screwed. You're going to be on Prozac the rest of your life. Haha. No. Sometimes we need to go on something like Prozac. Sometimes we need to go to therapy. Sometimes it happens. You can't tell folks to suck it up. Hey, you're a cop. Start acting like it. Don't start some gossiping. Don't be like, oh man, this, you're not going to believe what I just heard. We don't need the gossips. We don't need the officer to be embarrassed about the fact that they need help. And we don't want other officers harassing this officer because, quite frankly, it can happen to anybody. You can sit there and say to yourself, oh, I'm tough. I've done this. I've done that. I am tough. This will never happen to me. Well, guess what? It can happen to you. And if you're harassing an officer about their mental health issues, guess what? When you need it, you are going to be afraid to go seek it out because you are afraid that you are going to be the one harassed. All right. Help is on the way. Help is here. National Suicide Prevention Hotline, 800-273-TALK. Call that anytime. Sometimes cops want to talk to cops. 866-COP2-COP. Perfect. Safe Call Now, when we have drugs and alcohol involved. They can get you into rehab. They can get you a number of different things. 206-459-2030. Give them a call. There's plenty of other resources out there, but these are 3 good ones that are regularly recognized. You'll notice this is a screen capture from a suicide prevention video done by the Kenosha Police Department. That is up on Blackboard also. Please watch that because it's very powerful. Because quite frankly, you don't want that empty chair to be there, because that empty chair is the gentleman who had committed suicide at that department. And, will you be the empty chair? Will you prevent that empty chair? It's pretty powerful. Alrighty, folks. So, do we have any questions? If you do, you know how to get in touch with me. Do so. Otherwise, I will talk with you in person in class for the workout and see you virtually next week.